Welcome back to another GGF video, and today we're going to be looking at the ROG STRIX Z890-E Gaming Wi-Fi. Now, you might be wondering, why am I looking at a relatively, I wouldn't say old board, but an oldish board, because normally I cover the latest and the newest products. Well, we all know Intel had their refresh CPU launch, I'd say about a week or two ago, and it caught everyone off guard. It was a bit of a surprise about the performance, the uplift of the performance, and then also I think the price is even better than what we thought they were going to be. Now, I reached out to ASUS and I was like, hey, surely you must have some really fancy new boards coming out. And they said, no, they have no boards coming out in or for this new refresh line of CPUs. Other brands are doing it, but I thought, hey, why don't I cover a board that is older or their current board that can support those CPUs? Because you don't need a refresh motherboard. Other brands are doing it. They're specifically aiming them for the new Intel refresh. You don't need a specific board. It'll run fine on these. All the reviews we have seen for the 250K Plus and the 270K Plus have been on, I wouldn't say all of them, but I can guarantee you most of them you've seen, because the CPUs came first before the boards, are done on current gen boards like the ROG Z890 Hero. I've seen a few reviews on that. So they're more than capable of top-notch performance on the current boards. So let's talk a little bit about the CPUs. 270K Plus and the 250K Plus are $199 and $299, so about $200 and $300. I think they're a little bit more because obviously launch prices are never as they are. I think they're about $20 to $40 more. So yeah, performance got us off guard. The 270K is really up there. I think they're both up there for gaming performance, getting much closer to the AMD X3D chips. But then also with the 270K Plus, you've also got the rendering performance, the multi-core performance. I think Cinebench, it's right up there. So you're looking at something like a 9950X CPU, but also the price is nearly halved that of the 9950X. So seems that Intel are going with sort of an all-rounder CPU, good for gaming and then good for multitasking as well. So let's take a look at this board. I have not even opened it yet. I haven't covered an Intel board for a while. I've covered a lot previously when the Z890 came out, the Hero, the Extreme, even the Apex, I'm pretty sure I covered. This one kind of flew under my radar. So I did want to I wouldn't say revisit this because I haven't looked at it before, but revisit it for ASUS just to say, hey, this is a very capable board. And also, I think the price to performance is pretty good for this board. I'll just quickly open this. Now, it's always hard when I say I think this is a relatively, I wouldn't say affordable, I'd say it's a mid-tier. Like boards go up to 1,000 plus, boards can go down to $100 or less. But I think on the grand scheme of things, the amount of features you get, especially on this board, I think it's pretty good. And it is on sale. I wouldn't say it's on sale at the moment. I noticed some places, the ASUS web store has it the cheapest. And then also, believe it or not, Best Buy has it relatively affordable as well. I'm just going to see. I was looking for the Wi-Fi antenna. I was like, hang on a sec. I can't find it at all, but it was there. It was hiding. So this board, just a quick rundown, some pretty high-end parts or components. You're looking at 18 phases of VRM. I'll cover all this in more detail as I go through. It's got 7 M.2 slots on this board. That's pretty insane. 5 gigabit LAN, a bunch of USB-C, bunch of USB Type A, and Thunderbolt as well. So let's take a look at the board aesthetics. Let me quickly take some of this stuff off. I don't know what that was there. Take the peel off there. I decided to take these peels off just in case there's any reflections, and it might look a little bit weird, a little bit warped with my top-down shots. One on the audio as well. So we do have power reset, which is good. Debug LED, I would expect this on this board. This is definitely aimed at mid-tier. Is there another? Not one on there. Having a look around the back, no backplate, probably not needed on this type of board. I think ASUS are sort of aiming them towards the Hero and Extreme. You have to remember they can't creep too much into other categories of boards, because then you're going to be wondering, well, where is the difference between the segment of the boards? Like this is the ROG STRIX, then you got just the plain ROG, which is the Hero, then you have the Extreme, then you have Apex as well. Let me know also if you do want me to do something more of a dedicated video. I could do an AMD version, I could do an Intel version on the ASUS STRIX lineup, because you've got ones like the Dash A, the Dash E, which is this one, the Dash F, the Dash H, That's 4 straight away. There's probably another one I forgot. And then I can go through all the different tiers and sort of rank them on how they, I wouldn't say how they perform, because most of them are going to perform the same, more about the features that each of those boards do have. ATX form factor, I think all of the ROG Strix are ATX. I'm 100% certain on that. The Q release features, we have the M.2 Q release, which is this one here. Now there is a heat pipe in this one, which I'm happy to see. Extra cooling performance is always welcomed, especially if you're running a Gen 5. We have the M.2 Q slide. Actually, I might take this beefy one off because it really is getting in the way. I always do like to cover these M.2 features like the Q slide, the Q latch, all of that. Although this is a slightly older board, it might be running some older ones than say more of the recent boards. Obviously the ROG Glacial, which just launched, that one has some new updated features in terms of their Q features. So Q slide, which is this one here that does slide depending on the size of your M.2 drive, whether it's a 2280, 22110, and so on. M.2 Q latch is the more sort of one we're used to, that a lot of people are using. Not exactly the same that other brands are doing, but they're very similar, where it just latches in and out it goes. No more screws required. Then we have the PCIe Q release. Now, we all saw at CES that ASUS have gone back to the button style. Obviously, this is a slightly older board. It does have the one that just has the rock the GPU and out it comes. So I'm assuming in the next refresh of boards, whatever Intel has coming up, you will see the new, or going back to the press the button and out comes this releases the slot, just like we saw on the Glacial. Now it's LGA 1851. Power delivery is pretty beefy, 18 plus 1 plus 2 plus 2, 110 amps. And we do have a heatsink. It's going to be very, very hard to see, not heatsink, but heat pipe that runs. You can just see a little shimmer of silver. They've really hidden it just down there. You can see it curve around as well. The memory is 4 DIMM, up to 256 gigabytes, and it is 92 mega transfers. That would be, of course, OC. I'm just going to put some memory modules in. Some other features you're getting on this board are AEMP3, and you're also getting the DIMM Fit Pro features in the BIOS. So AEMP3, or ASUS call it ASUS Enhanced Memory Profile, first optimizes the clock driver and then the memory frequency. So this results in the best balance between performance and stability. So that's basically another memory profile you can choose, like the old school XMP and so on. Those are always evolving. And then there's also the NitroPUF DRAM tech, which I cover most of the times on these higher end boards, that improves the signal integrity via a smaller pin design. And it gives about 400 mega transfers improvement, and that's in their testing. So that's only on their higher end boards. So I think this would probably be the bare minimum, and then it will go up on their higher tier boards. Now PCIe, you are looking at 2. Primary, this one is of course off the CPU. Then your secondary is off the chipset. I'll get the chipset one out of the way first. It's PCIe 4, physically 16 in length, but it supports by 4 only. So that's locked at by 4. So anything like a sound card, network card, anything like that should be fine. You could run a GPU off there. It's just going to be running it by 4. That is locked, not shared with anything. You're not going to lose an M.2 if you put a card in there, and vice versa, or anything like that. PCIe primary 1 is PCIe 5.0, by 16 physically, by 16 electrically, of course, and that can be split to a single by 16, by 8/4/4 if you want to do some funky bifurcation. Now let's move on to some of the goodies in terms of M.2. Now this really kind of blew me away. If you're after a board that does a lot of storage and you don't want to go down the route like RAID cards or anything like that, we have them all under here. Now this is all done without any expansion cards. Like some brands, some companies do boards that can say, hey, we can do 5, 6, 7 M.2 SSDs, but you need to put a card in here, a card there, or if you want to populate them all, you're going to lose this, you're going to lose this, you're going to halve this, and so on. There is some sharing on this board, but it's definitely not as bad as what I thought it was going to be. So we have a heatsink there, heatsink for your primary, and then a little one down the bottom. So let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm actually going to fully populate this just for giggles with drives to see how ridiculous this looks. While I'm doing this, I'll read out the max sizes for the physical drives you can put in. Primary, of course, it can go all the way up to 22110. Not sure if anyone even uses those SSDs. Now, in order of the numbers scheme for them, they're calling them M.2, M.22, M.21, M.23, M.24, 5, 6, 7. I'm not sure exactly where they all are. Like, I could probably pause the video and look at them all, but I don't really need to reference them at the moment. There is just one little catch when I get down to M.23 and M.24, wherever they are on this board. So I did find out which one is M.23 and M.24. It is these ones here. So these ones are both PCIe 5.0 by 4. So the only sharing on this whole board is if you populate these two here, which are the ones that are connected to your CPU, you will then drop your primary PCIe 16 by slot down to 8. So I don't think that's too bad of a trade-off. Obviously 5090, it may make a little bit of a difference. You probably won't even notice. Maybe on paper, you might see some differences depending on what games or what program you're running it for. But other than that, that's the only thing that changes. So if you just populate these two, your PCIe 16 will drop down to by 8, and that is it. For the rest of them, we have this one down here is PCIe. This one's actually connected to the CPU. It's M.22, but it is PCIe 4 by 4, and then all of these three are chipset. These are PCIe by 4, PCIe 4 by 4 modes, and that is it for the M.2. So how crazy does that look? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can run all of these. You can run a GPU, no problems. No sharing with USB 4 at all on this board. I think ASUS are doing this on some of their recent boards, like the Dark Hero I checked out from AMD side, and also the Glacial. Those ones are starting to trade off things with the USB 4, but I think on more of these older ones, it's sharing bandwidth with that primary slot. So that is pretty sick. Network, there is a single Realtek 5 gigabit. Let me know your thoughts with this priced tier board. Would you like to prefer a second one? I think throwing on a second one wouldn't really add that much cost, and I think it just gives it that extra little flexibility that people can play around with, because you've got such a large amount of storage here. People might be picking up this board for, I don't know, something to do with storage. They might want a second network card just for something else, and then they don't have to worry about buying a second one for this slot down here. They've got a second one on board. For Wi-Fi, we have the Wi-Fi 7. It's good to see 320 megahertz channel bandwidth for that extra channel width. And let's just open up the antenna. Even though this board is a little bit older, it still has the newish push-on Wi-Fi antennas, and I say this in every video. It's a nice feature, but it's something that you're probably not going to be doing all of the time, and then you can just pull that off. And then these ones from ASUS are always magnetic as well. You can just stick it to the side of your case. Now, USB is pretty good as well. I hate seeing mid-tier boards or creeping up to expensive boards that are very limited in USB, but I think we're getting pretty good these days where a lot of boards are jamming as much as they can on as possible, and just look at all of that. So much going on there. So for the rear, total of 14 ports. We have 2 Thunderbolt 4, which are obviously the logos there with the Thunderbolt number 1, Thunderbolt port number 2. Then we have 2 more Type-C, which are 10 gigabit. But before that, I'll just say there's a total of 9 10 gigabit. So that's crossed between the Type-C and Type-A. So there are 7 Type-A, which will be the reds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then the remaining 2 are the 10 gig ones here. One here, one here. Now you see a little lightning bolt there. Now that one there, get that up close. That one there is not Thunderbolt. It's a different lightning bolt, but that one does provide up to 30 watt of power delivery for fast charging for phones and whatnot. So it's good that they actually have labeled that one. And then the bottom one is just a normal USB 10 gig. And then there's 3 more additional USB 5 gigabit ports there, Type A, which is the blue, 1, 2, 3 there. So that is a pretty chunky rear IO. We have audio, display I'll talk about in a sec. We have clear CMOS. I do like that it's kind of sunken down a bit. You're not going to press it by accident. We have the BIOS flashback. You press that once you've stuck the USB drive with your BIOS on it, stick it in there. You can hold this down for a few seconds, it lights up, and then it will flash the BIOS with no CPU, no graphics, no nothing at all. That's been out for a long time. Front USB, you're looking at a total of 11. So we have one single USB 20 gigabit. This is it here. So this will be for your case front panel, which has a Type C. I think having 2 in the whole grand scheme of things of list of components I would want, I think having 2 internal headers for case Type C probably isn't needed. I think I'd rather something like network or an extra storage slot or something like that, because 2, there's not too many cases that come with that, and they're normally super high-end cases. And then when a board does have it, it's normally a 20 and a 10 anyway. So then we have 2 USB 5 gigabits, which is one there. Then we have a right angle one here. So that will give you an additional 4 more USB 5 gig ports there. And then the one there. It's good that they do one of each, one right angle. Most times you only need to plug in one. The right angle one does look pretty clean, because when you run this one, it does normally have to sort of loop around and it looks a little bit messy. Then we have 3 additional USB 2 headers. Now, I only thought at CES that when I covered those boards, also on the new Glacial and Dark Hero, that I thought those were the new refresh boards for AMD that was all having 3 USB. I didn't know that ASUS had any prior boards with 3 USB 2.0. And you might be thinking, well, who uses USB 2.0? It's so old. Well, I think that's needed for a lot of components that you run internally, RGB hubs, fan controllers, all of that. That'll give you an additional 6 USB 2.0 ports. You don't have to worry about splitters or anything like that. Now, the rest of the rear IO, looking at graphics, we have quite a good selection here now. And saying that, I don't think anyone's going to buy this and run any of the primary, their primary GPU off the onboard or anything like that, or their primary monitor. But you do have DisplayPort 1.4, which is this one, that's up to 8K 60, one HDMI 2.1, which is 8K 60. And then we also have the 2 Thunderbolt, which also does display out, and you're looking at 4K 60 for those as well. So quite a decent amount of output options. I think that is handy because you can have like your primary monitor. Then if you're running side monitors or a top monitor, you don't have to plug that into your dedicated GPU. You can plug that onto the onboard, and you can also get the high refresh, because those side monitors probably aren't doing anything, but you do want to try to match the same refresh rate as your primary one. So when you move your mouse around from monitor to monitor, you don't slow down, then speed up and slow down and so on. But I think that's pretty much it on this video. It's gone for probably 20 minutes already. These seem to drag on, but I do like to cover all these features. And this one, for the price of this board, is $399. You might be thinking, well, that is a high-end expensive board, but I don't think it is that bad. On some places like Amazon, I think it's up around the $480, but on the ASUS store, on Best Buy, who knows, maybe tomorrow or whenever I release this video, those prices might change back to what it is on Amazon, but it is $399 as of now, and you're getting a whack of features with the M.2. You're getting a beefy VRM, and it'll also run those new Intel refresh CPUs with no issues at all. I'm actually trying to get some, probably going to end up buying some just so I can use some in some builds, maybe show some benchmarks and so on. But anyway, I think that's it. Once again, I want to thank you guys for watching. I always enjoy doing these motherboard videos for you guys. I want to thank ASUS for sending this one out, and we'll see you in the next one.